On September 6th of 2018, an off-duty police officer walked into the home of 26-year-old Botham Jean after assuming that his apartment was her apartment and shot him twice, once in the chest, then called the ambulance so that he could be taken to the hospital, where he ultimately died. On October 1st, 2019, the officer in question, Amber Guyger, was found guilty of murder. Today, October 2nd, 2019, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This case has been something that a lot of my contemporaries have been following in the Black community for a lot of different reasons. And I want to expound on some of those today and to speak on some of the elements in play when she got her sentencing and throughout the entire trial. Firstly, I want to talk on white supremacy and white women. Historically, white women have been some of the biggest agents of white supremacy since its inception in the West. They weaponize their womanhood, they weaponize their femininity, they weaponize their tears, and use these things to drum up sympathy and dodge accountability for their reprehensible actions. Historically speaking, white women have been some of the biggest agents of white supremacy, from beating Black people to death because their husbands raped said Black people during the times of chattel slavery up until today, weaponizing their fear as an excuse to expose Black people to the quote-unquote law enforcement system, which could possibly leave them dead, disenfranchised, or incarcerated for an indeterminate amount of time. And honestly, white women are arguably more violent because they have that access to femininity on their side. There's this thing called the chivalry hypothesis, and I'm gonna thank person in a Discord server I'm in for even bringing this to my attention, because I didn't know there was a name for this concept. The chivalry hypothesis is the idea that people who are perceived as women are treated more leniently by the criminal justice system because police, prosecutors, judges, and the public are predominantly male in the ways that matter influence-wise. And because they are more dominant, they have a more gracious or lenient attitude toward people who are considered or perceived as women, right? And basically it means if you're a girl, you get off easier. That's what that concept is. And this is kind of doubled down on when we're talking about white women specifically, because this tends to apply almost exclusively, I would say, to white women. There is no such thing as leniency for Black women. There is no such thing as leniency for non-Black women of color. There is no such thing as leniency if you are not a white woman in the current criminal justice system. So, white women are aware of this, and they take advantage of this which is why whenever you see them in court cases, like that girl who got sentenced to prison for shouting racial slurs and waving a gun at a black family's birthday party or something like that, she was crying. And Amber Guyger as well, more relevantly, she got on the stand and she was crying, saying, oh, well, she feels like a piece of crap, and it never occurred to her to use her CPR training to try and save him, and she had intended to kill him, but only because she was so scared, you see. If you hear a plane outside, ignore that. But white women are aware of this compulsion, and they use it and weaponize it so that they can dodge accountability for their actions. Which brings me to another point. White tears. White tears. What is that? What is white tears? Because it sounds like a band name. It does. But white tears are literally just that. But they are so much more destructive than people give them credit for. White tears, that is when a white person, not just a white woman, a white person can get on a witness stand in a court of law and cry and whine and sob and carry on and make this big stink about how they're so sorry and they didn't mean it and that wasn't them and they didn't have that intention and blah, 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 blah. But somebody is still dead behind their actions. Somebody is still irreversibly destroyed behind their actions. I'm looking at Amber Guyger. I'm looking at Casey Anthony. I am looking at Brett fucking Kavanaugh. I'm looking at the crying Nazi. All of them. They employ the exact same shit. What do these people have in common? They got on a witness stand or got on a platform somewhere and started sobbing their eyes out about how it's not their fault and they didn't mean it and their intention somehow matters despite the fact that they've enacted violence against an entire group of people and blah, 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 blah. And don't you feel so sorry for them because they're crying? They're remorseful, don't you see? No, I don't see. It's theater. It's spectacle. It is privilege enacted as exactly that. It is violence. Period. There is nothing empathetic about white tears. There is nothing humanized about a white person crying on a witness stand after they've murdered somebody in cold blood or contributed to somebody being murdered in cold blood or enacted sexual violence on a group of people in cold blood. There's nothing relatable about that for me. So those tears mean nothing. And I call this a white problem specifically because that's exactly what it is. Black people in specific cannot cry their way out of a maximum sentence in a court of law in the United States. They can't. They can't cry and sob and act and carry on their way out of life in prison if they've committed even a non-violent crime. Statistically, this has been proven. Like, people are far more likely to be lenient toward white people in every form of emotional distress ever than they will be toward black people or non-black people of color in that exact same amount of emotional distress. So frankly, I don't really give a fuck about white tears. It's a weapon. And white people know it's a weapon. White women specifically know that it is a weapon. Another layer to this case that I wanted to speak on is forgiveness culture and Black Christianity. Now, I'm going to be very candid. This is not news to anyone who knows me, but this is not coloring my opinion in a pivotal way. I have beef with Christianity. This isn't news, but I have no beef with Black Christians. I have no beef with Christians, period. What y'all believe is y'all's business. I'm not Christian. I stay away from Christianity as much as is humanly possible. But I ain't got no beef with Christianity, and I don't have no beef with Christians. I do, however, have a beef with a particular part of Christian doctrine that I have seen exemplified in the Black community. I say exemplified in that Black people seem to be the ones who practice this the best, but to their own detriment. So it's not a boon to this community. Like, it's not a good thing that they're exemplifying this. Black forgiveness. What is Black forgiveness? Black forgiveness in the sphere of white supremacy is white people and non-Black people of color. I'm calling everybody out. It is white people and non-Black people of color expecting that Black people turn the other cheek or forgive indiscriminately, regardless of the violence that is being enacted against them or against their community. And the reason that I bring up Christianity and Black Christianity in specific in talking about this concept is because Black people are some of the biggest supporters that I know of the turn the other cheek rhetoric in terms of like judicial situations, right? Even in real life, like outside of a court system, just in general, Black people are the biggest, most forgiving people I know, which is not inherently a good thing, in my opinion. I don't think that there is value in turning the other cheek ad infinitum and saying, or like verbally saying or saying through your actions that it is okay that you enacted this sort of violence or you did this terrible thing or whatever sort of nonsense you've pulled against me or my community today. I don't find value in saying that that's okay just because of my personal spiritual beliefs, because I do have them. And I don't find value in turning the other cheek indiscriminately. That means like without question, without contest. So everybody gets forgiveness and everything that everybody does is okay because I don't want to rock the boat type shit. And I'm not with that. The reason I bring this up in reference to the Botham Jean case is because today, during sentencing, members of Botham Jean's family, I don't know his name, and I'm not going to say his name because I don't see a reason to like put him out there like that. But Botham Jean's brother, I believe, his brother, I think it was his brother or his mom, but one of them, regardless, one of them went out of their way to hug Amber Guyger, the person who had like murdered their family member in cold blood for no fucking reason. Went out of their way to hug them and say, well, I don't even want you to go to jail. I'm not going to say anything rude or mean because I don't think that both of them would want that. And that's just not right. I hope you go with God, blah, blah, blah. And okay, sure. But this is a pattern. Outside of the Botham Jean case, this is a pattern. I cannot tell y'all how many times I have seen Black people issue a hand of forgiveness when their family members have been slaughtered by the goddamn police or been incarcerated or detained by the police because some white lady caught the shakes when she saw a little girl selling water on the street, or she saw Black people barbecuing in a park, or whatever the hell else. I cannot tell y'all how many times I done seen that shit. And if you're paying attention to the news in this way, the way that I am, you see exactly what I'm talking about. This is a pattern. This is a pattern. At this point, Black forgiveness is not, it's not the exception. It is the expectation. We are expected to forgive indiscriminately, no matter what the hell it is that's going on. No matter what the hell happened, no matter what the fuck the perpetrator did, we're expected to forgive indiscriminately if that person is white. White in specific. There is a racial dynamic here. If that person is white, you know what? No, as long as that person is not Black, we are expected to forgive without question. That's what we're expected to do. And it has been thus for decades at this point. That is why there is a constant push for nonviolence and turning the other cheek and love trumps hate and blah, blah, blah. And no, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that. You do not get to kill somebody that I love and expect me to kiss you on the forehead as you taking your raggedy ass to prison. You don't get to go to prison resting on your cot in happiness and solitude, knowing that you have been forgiven by me and my own, because you won't be. You do not get to hurt us and go home like nothing happened. You don't get freedom from your own monstrousness, as far as I am concerned. And honestly, I think that needs to be the viewpoint of Black people and non-Black people of color, because it's not just us who suffer at the hands of white supremacy. Black people and non-Black people of color need to let that shit go. You spend all your time turning the other cheek and you wonder why you constantly getting smacked up, bruh. That's not helpful. That's not proving nothing. There is no value in, quote unquote, being the bigger person when racial violence is on the line. There's nothing rewarding about that, in my opinion. There's nothing to be gained from that, and I will not be participating in that, because that is some horse shit. All of that said, I don't believe that punitive justice is justice. I don't believe in prisons. I don't see any value in their existence. They don't stop recidivism. At this point, it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry, especially in the United States, and it's glorified slave labor. That's what it is. It's glorified slave labor. Because in these for-profit prisons, these prisoners, they get sent out to make license plates or scale fish or grow crops or pick up trash or whatever. And these are perfectly respectable things to do. That's not my issue. My issue is that the people who are ultimately benefiting from this outdoor exercise that prisoners are being subjected to are capitalists who don't give a fuck about these prisoners in the first place. They are putting these prisoners in inhumane conditions. Inhumane. Yes, inhumane. You don't get to treat prisoners like shit, especially when the majority of them are non-violent offenders. And they are disproportionately represented as people of color. You don't get to treat them like shit and strip them of their human rights just because they broke a law. They should still have the right to vote. They should still have the right to education. They should still have the right to transition. They should still have the right to healthcare. They should still have rights, period. You don't get to treat people like shit just because you threw them in a cage. There is a possibility. There's always a possibility to help people past that, to grow people past that. But they won't act like humans if you won't treat them like humans. They will give you exactly what the fuck they get because that's what humanity does. I'm not bending over backwards for somebody who treats me like shit, nigga, fuck you. Why the hell should prisoners do the exact same thing? That's ridiculous to assume of anybody in any way, shape, or form. So I don't find value or justice in throwing somebody into or under a prison or whatever. I see no value in that. That's not helpful. All of that said, this case, the Botham Jean case, went exactly as myself and the majority of the people that I speak to thought it would go. These are the elements of the case. A 26-year-old perfect Negro. Perfect Negro. Let me explain what a perfect Negro is for those of you who are uninitiated. A perfect Negro is somebody who has no priors, who has no drug convictions, who never smoked weed, who never looked at a girl sideways in their life, who's never said a cuss word, a person who went to church and stayed up in church, a person who graduated with honors, a person who is assimilated into the model minority standard that white supremacy has thrust upon people of color and black people in specific. When I say a perfect Negro, I mean somebody who can't be slandered after they're murdered like Trayvon Martin was. I mean somebody who cannot be slandered after they're murdered like Sandra Bland. When I say a perfect Negro, I mean somebody who don't make waves for the white people. That's what a perfect Negro is. I don't ascribe to be a perfect Negro. I think that is some white supremacist, racist ass bullshit, and that's what it is. I think it's bullshit. So, Botham Jean, a 26-year-old, big, beefy, brown-skinned black man, minding his goddamn business in his house, having ice cream after work. He wasn't safe from some feckless white woman with a gun who decided to shoot him dead because she can't read numbers. And she cried on the podium and said how sorry she was and that she wished that he'd been the one to kill her so that she didn't have to deal with the accountability that comes from being a fucking cold-blooded murderer. Like, how sad for you. That's so sad. You have to live with this every day and my heart breaks for you. Aw, poor you. Those were the elements of the case. A black man minding his goddamn business and a crying white bitch on a witness stand. We already knew what the outcome of this case would be. Yesterday, when she was ruled as guilty, honestly, I was surprised. Which is both funny and sad For the same damn reason. Because why the hell should I be surprised that a murderer got charged with murder? It's because she a white girl. It's because she a crying white girl. Ain't nothing more dangerous in the world for a black person than a crying white girl. And Emmett Till can speak to this fact. Well, I mean, he could if he hadn't been murdered because of a crying white girl. There is nothing more dangerous. And we knew. My people, we knew from the beginning. When this case happened last year, we knew wasn't shit gonna happen. We knew she wasn't gonna serve no time. Darren Wilson didn't. Why the fuck should she? Don't nobody serve time for killing black people if they got a badge behind their gun. Don't nobody serve time for killing a black person if they have a badge behind their gun. Nobody. It has always been thus. So we knew. We knew she wasn't gonna get shit. And I saw the sentencing today while I was in my local convenience store getting my snacks for the night. And I saw it and I was just like, are you fucking serious? And I promptly came home and grieved. Because Botham Jean was not someone I knew, but he was one of mine. He was one of mine. My people. He was one of my people. And he was killed senselessly because some white girl can't figure out what the fuck her apartment is. And she got off with 10 years, which is not a fair enough sentence for someone who commits cold-blooded murder for no goddamn reason. And she will get off, mark my words, she will get off in 3 to 5 because of good behavior. I promise you that. 5 years from now, if the earth survives that long, we will be seeing her released from prison and nobody will be surprised. Nobody. Not me, anyway. Not my people. Because we been knew that y'all didn't give a fuck about us to begin with. We been knew. We been knew that we don't matter to y'all. So I don't know what the purpose of this video was besides the fact that I am pissed off and I am grieving and somebody needs to fucking hear me. If you can kill Trayvon, you can kill Mike, you can kill Eric, you can kill Philando, you can kill Ayanna, you can kill Sandra, and you can kill fucking both of them and nothing happens. We been knew. Y'all done told us for centuries how much you don't give a fuck about me and my people. This is not news to us. But for those of you who are pretending to be allies, now is not the time for you to sit on your ass and go, well, that's really fucked up. Because, yeah, we know. Yeah, we fucking know. So open your goddamn mouth and say something. For once, utilize your privilege to do something productive. Make her guilty verdict a necessity rather than an outlier. Speak truth to power and call out injustice wherever it stands, regardless of your fucking demographic. You ain't gotta be black to give a fuck about Botham Jean. You just gotta be human.